Hello, Miss Psilos here. I'll be walking you through today's lecture. We're going to be covering a really important state that our body constantly works to maintain. It's called homeostasis. In this lecture, we'll create a model to demonstrate the process of maintaining homeostasis. To do so, you're going to need a piece of paper or a notebook to draw out your model, unless your teacher has allowed you to take notes using a different format. Turn your paper sideways so that the model takes up a good portion of the page. We're going to add some text into the model that may take up space, so using the whole page will be helpful. Also, in today's lecture, if anything is written in blue, this time I do want you to write it down. So, homeostasis, what is that? Homeostasis is a stable internal condition of the body. This may sound like a simple thing, but it requires coordination of multiple body systems to achieve. The internal conditions of our body, physically and chemically, need to stay balanced. What do I mean by this? I'm going to use an analogy to explain. The job of the thermostat, this thing, in your home is to detect changes to the temperature in the rooms and to turn on the heat or air conditioning to try to maintain the temperature at a constant level. So let's say that you want your room to always be at 72 degrees Fahrenheit, but a breeze rolls in because someone just opened the front door. When the temperature drops just slightly, the thermostat will detect this small drop in temperature and kick on the heat to bring the temperature back to the level that you set it at, back to 72 degrees. This requires communication between your thermostat, which detected the change and processed what action needed to be taken, and the heating system that will then activate to carry out the action required to counteract the change, which was the drop in temperature. Our body does something similar to maintain a stable internal environment or to maintain homeostasis. It's not just temperature that our body needs to regulate, but also the water level, blood pressure, amount of salt, amount of potassium, amount of glucose in the blood, calcium, oxygen, carbon dioxide, so many different things. That's what homeostasis is all about, maintaining the internal conditions to a set point or a stable level. Our organs of all of our body systems need to work together to maintain homeostasis. There needs to be coordinated communication between the organs to activate functions that will counteract change or changes to the internal conditions of the body. Typically, internal and external conditions of the body are detected by our nervous system, specifically by our nerves. But there are some other sets of specialized cells whose job it is to detect small changes in the body. Once those changes are detected, they need to be communicated to other organs who will determine the next course of action. And those organs will communicate with others to carry out a function to counteract these changes. These organs can communicate to others by sending out hormones in the bloodstream, etc. The pathway of detection, communication, and action to maintain homeostasis follows a common pathway. We call this the homeostasis circuit, and it's what you're seeing in this picture. So let's learn more about this homeostasis circuit and the roles that organs play within the circuit. Okay, so let's start drawing our model. Remember, turn your page sideways to draw this. What you'll see written in black are the pieces of the homeostasis circuit that we will use as identifiers of the roles that organs play as they participate in the homeostasis circuit. Anything written in blue, these are things that you should also write down, and they'll serve as little notes to help us with understanding the circuit. And then anything written in red, which we'll see later, will serve as an example of homeostasis. At the bottom of your page, draw a horizontal line that spans the whole way across, just like you see on the screen. Label this the set point. This represents the stable level at which your body is trying to maintain, or the state at being at homeostasis. This is the normal internal condition of the body. For each physical or chemical thing that our body is regulating, there's always going to be a set point. Okay, next, fill in the arrows moving away from and returning to the set point, just like you see on the screen, and label the different roles that are part of the homeostasis circuit. We will define these shortly. So pause the video now, jot down everything that you need to, that you see on the screen right now, and then start back up when you're ready to go. Okay, let's define the parts of the circuit. The first is the stimulus. A stimulus is a change that occurs inside or outside of the body that moves the internal conditions away from the set point or away from homeostasis, like a drop in glucose because you haven't eaten in a while, or an increase in body temperature because you're exercising. Our body needs the ability to detect these changes when they occur. A receptor or a specialized cell of the body will detect this change. Sometimes the receptor is a sensory nerve cell. Sometimes it's a different kind of specialized cell. Once that receptor detects the change, it must communicate that something is off. If it doesn't communicate, no action will be taken to counteract the change. So the receptor will send a message via a nerve impulse, if it's a nerve, or a hormone, or a similar message molecule, if it's a different type of specialized cell, to another organ. And this next organ in the sequence is called the control center. This is an organ that will coordinate a response. What I mean by this is that this organ will understand the message that's coming to it, that something has changed, and it will communicate to the next organ that will do something to counteract that change. In a way, it's serving as a processing center of messages. Sometimes the control center is a part of the brain, but other times it's a different organ, so it's not always going to be the brain. The control center will communicate to the next organ by sending out nerve impulses or hormones. The next organ that receives the message from the control center is called the effector. The effector is the organ that will do some action or carry out a response that counteracts the stimulus and will move the body back to the normal condition. For example, if the stimulus originally is not enough water in your blood, the action or the response that the effector does should increase the amount of water in your body, so counteracting the original stimulus. So if the original stimulus was not enough water in your blood, the effector is going to do something that will increase the amount of water in your body and eventually the amount of water in your blood. So that could be like absorbing more water from your kidneys. In this case, the organ doing the response in the example I just gave is the kidneys. So that means the kidneys are the effector. And the action that they're doing, absorbing more water in this case, or in this example, is the response. Does that make sense? So let's add some clues to help you with identifying the parts of the circuit, because we're going to do and work through some examples of maintaining homeostasis, and you all will need to be able to identify what organs are acting in these roles of the circuit. So starting at the beginning, the stimulus is a change or an event, some action or some change that takes the body away from its set point. So think of it like an action. The receptor is going to be a specialized cell. The control center is going to be a specific tissue or an organ. The effector is also going to be a specific tissue or organ. And the response that the effector does is going to be an action. Okay, so pause if you need to. Write down everything that you see before you move on. Okay, let's roll through an example together, and then I'll have you guys try some examples on your own from a text prompt. For the examples you do from this lecture, write them down on the back of your model or work on the left side page if you're doing this in your notebook. We will also use the outline format just like you see on the screen. Again, pause the video to make sure that you write down the outline format that you see here and this first example that we'll walk through together, thermoregulation. So pause the video right now, write down what you see on the screen on either the back of your model or on the left side page of your model. Okay, so you can see that we are starting with the temperature increasing, body temperature increasing, so thermoregulation. Okay, so this first example is all about thermoregulation or regulating your body's temperature. On average, the temperature of the human body is maintained at around 98.6 degrees Fahrenheit, although some physicians argue that it's not exactly this, and person to person it varies. For this example, let's just say that the body temperature lowers just slightly below 98.6 degrees Fahrenheit. So that's our stimulus. That is a change from normal. That is a change from the set point, in this case, of body temperature. Therefore, the stimulus in this example is a drop in body temperature. Well, this is a change and it needs to be detected. We have specialized cells called thermoreceptors that detect this change in temperature. Because they're detecting the change, these thermoreceptors are receptors in our homeostasis circuit. They are serving as the receptor. These thermoreceptors will send a nerve impulse or a hormone, some message to the control center. In this case, the organ that the thermoreceptors communicate to is the hypothalamus. This is a region of the brain that helps with regulating body temperature. The hypothalamus will receive the message from the thermoreceptors that the body temperature dropped and will send out a message to the muscles. In doing so, it's coordinating a response. The message that the hypothalamus sent out is going to activate the muscles. When the muscles receive the message and activate, they will begin contracting and relaxing at a rapid pace, which to us looks like shivering. The muscles, in this case, are the effector. See, tissue or organ, muscles. The action that they're performing, contracting and relaxing rapidly, that's the response. And by doing so, they are generating heat, which will bring the body temperature back to its set point or back to normal. And there you go, thermoregulation, an example of maintaining homeostasis. So make sure you pause here and write down everything that you need to on your paper. But you can see here the stimulus, that's an action. The receptor, that's a particular cell. The control center is a tissue or organ, in this case the hypothalamus. The effector, another tissue or organ, in this case the muscles. And the response is an action, shivering, that brings the body temperature back to normal. Or you could say contracting and relaxing quickly, which is the more appropriate way to describe what shivering is. Ready to try some on your own? Let's do another example of maintaining homeostasis, and this time we're going to look at glucoregulation, so how the body is maintaining a stable blood sugar level or blood glucose level. So make sure on your outline, you've got the next one, B, and then we'll look in this case for blood glucose levels getting too high. So I've already identified the stimulus for you. What I'd like you to do is to read through this text prompt that you have here on the screen And I want you to identify the rest of the homeostasis circuit. What is acting as the receptor? What is acting as the control center, the effector, and then what is the response? So pause the video now. I'll show you the answer when you come back, but try to do it on your own and then check your answer in a little bit. Okay, here are the answers. So when your blood glucose level increases, it gets too high or it's moving away from the set point where it's increasing above it, that is the stimulus. So I already gave that one to you. The receptor is what is detecting this rise in blood glucose level. So in this case, it was the receptor cells on the pancreas. Those are the first things that detect this change. They are going to communicate to the next organ. In this case, it's still within the pancreas, but we're looking at a different region of the pancreas. So these receptor cells are going to communicate that change, communicate the stimulus to this portion of the pancreas called the islets of Langerhans. This is serving as the control center. This is coordinating the next response, or coordinating the response to the stimulus. So the islets of Langerhans, the control center in this example, they're going to communicate to the liver, and the liver is going to serve as the effector in this example. So the liver is going to perform an action that should be counteracting the stimulus. So in this case, if the blood glucose is too high, the liver should be doing something to bring it back down. Well, the liver is going to absorb glucose from the blood, which should remove it out of the bloodstream and store it. So in that case, it is counteracting the stimulus. So the liver is the effector, and the action that they do is the response. So if you got all that on your own, good job. If not, modify your responses. Let's try another one. In this case, too low, still within glucoregulation, but now let's do it again, but in this case, too low. Same idea, pause the video, read through this prompt, and identify the pieces that you need for the homeostasis circuit. Here are the answers. Not too different, right? In this case, receptor is the same, control center is the same, the effector is the same, but what the effector is doing in this case, because now there's not enough glucose in the blood, the response is a little bit different. So in this case, the liver is attempting to rise the blood sugar level because it was too low. That's what the stimulus was. But everything else stayed the same. Okay, let's try a different example. So letter C, osmoregulations, how the body maintains a stable volume of water in the blood. So in this case, we're going to work with the stimulus being too high. So read through the prompt, and this time I'm not giving you the exact stimulus. Find what it is in the prompt and fill in the rest of the homeostasis circuit. Did you get this? So the stimulus was the amount of water in the bloodstream is rising too high. You can find it right here. And what is originally detecting this, or is the first thing to be detecting the rise in water level in the blood? The osmoregulator cells. And these are found within the hypothalamus. So this is one region of the hypothalamus that is detecting the stimulus, detecting the change. And then these osmoregulator cells are going to be communicating to another region, still within the hypothalamus, but this other region is going to be coordinating the response. So that is the control center in this case. This other region of the hypothalamus is going to communicate to the kidneys, and the kidneys are going to serve as the effector because they are going to carry out an action that will counteract the stimulus. So what do the kidneys do? They're going to pull more water from the blood and move it into the urine to try to get rid of some of that extra water. And that is the response, which should lower the amount of water in the bloodstream. Okay, try it again, but this time it's too low. I'll show you the answer in a little bit. Pause the video. Did you get this? Okay, Not too different. Amount of water in this case in the bloodstream is too low. It dropped below the set point. So same cells are going to be acting as the receptor. The osmoregulator cells are detecting the drop in water level in the blood, and they will communicate to the other portion of the hypothalamus, which is still the control center in this case. The other portion of the hypothalamus will communicate to the kidneys, the effector, and the kidneys will carry out the response. And the response that they do is to stop pulling water from the blood, to leave more water in the bloodstream so that over time it increases back to the set point. Okay, that is the end of this lecture video. Hopefully you guys get the gist about how our body maintains homeostasis. And now you have some examples under your belt.